A little refreshing water, music, let's begin. Peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you. Today I'm bringing you a very powerful story from the book The Most Famous Serial Killers in History by the author Abu al-Muzaffar Said bin Muhammad al-Sanari. I've noticed while reading some stories, especially horror ones, that many people wonder about the reality of vampires and whether they actually exist. Whenever you ask anyone about them, they always say, no, there are no vampires. What is a vampire anyway? A vampire is a mythical figure invented by poor people in the Middle Ages to relieve their fears. So the whole thing is a complete fabrication. But what most people don't know is that in the medical field there is a real disease called Rimfeld syndrome or Rimfeld-Bell syndrome. It's a mental illness, and the person with it feels an irresistible urge to drink blood. Rimfeld-Bell syndrome makes the person who has it go mad, only wanting to drink blood. Although this disease is very rare, there are documented cases of serial killers and murderers. There were serial killers who had this disease and actually enjoyed drinking blood. One of these killers is the one we're talking about today. So, to learn his story, come with me. Between 1920 and 1924, a group of boys or children were playing in the Enlina area of Hanover, Germany. These boys were playing when one of them suddenly screamed and pointed to a muddy, filthy spot by the river. When his friends went to see what was going on, they found a human skull on top of the mud and filth. As usual, parents who see such a sight quickly run away and tell their parents. Their parents, in turn, quickly went and informed the police. The police arrived at the scene and discovered that, in addition to the skull, there were human bones. The skull and the bones all belonged to the same person. In the days that followed, they found another quantity of bones in the same river. When they examined these bones, they found that they all belonged to young men between the ages of 17 and 20. Their skulls had been separated from their bodies, and their flesh had been removed from their bones. The person who did this was a butcher for Eid al-Adha. He had cut them from their bodies and removed the flesh from the bones with a sharp instrument, then dumped them in the river. At first, the police thought that these human remains came from a medical laboratory or from grave robbers, people who steal corpses in graves. But after they found more bones, they also found a leather bag or purse containing human entrails, intestines and other personal belongings. They found this bag in one of the swamps near the river. That's when the investigators started thinking and said, the prestige, music. Why are the grave robbers in the labs? This whole thing is definitely a crime. With the increasing number of human remains appearing in the Lana River, the press started writing about it, and everyone in the city became afraid. People started talking about werewolves, meaning werewolves who had transformed into wolves. They started hallucinating that there was a werewolf eating human flesh. The solution? Music. They went to sleep, and their fear increased as more reports started coming to the police from families about their children disappearing. This prompted the Hanover police, with the help of many volunteers, to launch a search campaign to see if they could find any evidence or something that would solve this mystery. What is happening in our city? They searched everywhere: forests, swamps, alleys, even cemeteries and abandoned places. They searched everywhere, and then they blocked or closed off the river and searched its course. They found a large quantity of human bones, and when they collected them, they discovered that they belonged to 22 people. Males between the ages of 15 and 20, some with old bones and some with new ones. Most of them had had their flesh removed before they were killed during the day. The police arrived and launched a large arrest campaign, bringing in all the known criminals, anyone with a record. They interrogated them and placed informants everywhere, on every corner. Anyone they suspected was immediately apprehended and interrogated. But despite all their efforts, they didn't find anything. Neither the informants, nor the police, nor the known criminals had anything to reveal. So all their efforts were in vain. On June 22, 1924, passengers at Hanover train station noticed two men shouting and arguing loudly. When they went to see what was going on, they found a teenager and a man in his 40s fighting. Some of them were approached by a policeman who asked, "What's going on? Why are you arguing?" The serious, 40-year-old immediately pointed at the young boy and told the policeman, "Arrest this boy. He's traveling with forged documents. Arrest him." The young boy, now furious, told the policeman, "He's lying. He held me captive in his house for several days and tried to kill me. The serious, 40-year-old man became flustered and said to the policeman, "You believe this boy? He's lying. I'm a grown man, I'm talking to you. He's lying. First, he ran away from his family. Second, he's traveling with forged documents. Third, I'm an honest man and I work for the police." The policeman looked at them suspiciously and remembered his superior's words in light of the events that had transpired. He remembered his superior had told him not to overlook anything, no matter how small, in the events that were unfolding. Anything, no matter how small, could help them. So the policeman took them without further discussion and led them to the police station. There, at the station, the officer recognized the 40-year-old man. He knew him, and his name was Freitas Harmon. He had a criminal record and sometimes worked as an informant for the police. People with criminal records are often used. They bring in people with similar stories and use them as informants. This was Harmon's case. He sometimes worked as an informant for the police. But that's not the point. The point is that this 40-year-old Harmon had a long record of crimes, music, sexual harassment of teenage boys. This man turned out to be a harasser. The teenage boy's name was Carl From, and he was 15 years old. He said that he met Harmon at the train station a few days earlier, and Harmon offered to help him find a house and a job. So he took him to his apartment, and there he sexually harassed and assaulted him. On his last day at Harmon's apartment, the boy woke up in the morning and found Harmon holding a large knife and putting it to his body like he was putting it to a sheep's body. Then he turned to the boy and said, "So, you're afraid of death?" The boy was scared. He couldn't even reply, he just fell silent. Music, he says that Honey Harmon laughed, burst out laughing, and moved away from him, saying, "I was just joking, I was just teasing you. Screw you with your stupid joke, you donkey." After this dirty joke from Harmon, the boy decided to run away. So he followed Harmon to the train station, and from there they arrived at the police station. And by a strange coincidence, notice how quickly God reveals what he wants to reveal. When Harmon was at the police station, the mother of one of the missing young men I told you about at the beginning, named Robert Fetzel, was sitting waiting for the police station officer. The poor woman was waiting for the officer, wanting to ask about her missing son, wanting to know anything about him. As soon as they brought Harmon and Fetzel's mother in, she was sitting like that. Suddenly, she started looking at him and focusing on a specific spot on his body, his jacket. So she quickly went to him, threw herself on him, grabbed the jacket, and started shouting, "This is my jacket. This jacket you're wearing is my son's," she said. The police surrounded them and separated them, asking her what was wrong. "Why are you yelling at the man?" "I have his jacket," she replied. "I'm certain that the jacket this man is wearing is my son Robert's. He wore it the night he disappeared. To be sure, take it off. You'll find the name Fitz written inside." They did indeed take Harmon off the jacket and found Fitz's name written inside. But Harmon said, "I don't know him. I don't know who this Robert you're talking about is. I bought this jacket from someone who sells second-hand clothes. Every time I buy a jacket, I ask who it belonged to before me." Robert Fitz's car was the owner of this jacket. When he disappeared, he was 18 years old. One night, he was returning from a circus performance when he suddenly vanished. He was last seen with an older man who claimed to be a policeman. Suspicion immediately fell on Harmon. The police went and searched his house, specifically his apartment. They found a large quantity of used clothing, a significant portion of which appeared to belong to missing young men. Investigators noticed bloodstains and dried bloodstains on the walls of his apartment, making it look like a butcher's shop. Harmon claimed he bought the clothes from second-hand clothing vendors and didn't know their true origin. He explained that the bloodstains on the walls were animal blood, as he sometimes traded in meat, so of course there would be blood in his apartment. However, Harmon's excuses didn't convince the police. They already knew who he was, a sexual predator with a long history of assaulting and harassing children and teenagers. He didn't leave anyone alone, and the fact that they found so many clothes belonging to missing young men in his apartment was the biggest proof of his direct involvement in their disappearances. So, they brought in the German detectives, confronted him, and gave him a thorough interrogation. Music, they presented him with the evidence and even beat him severely. Until they finally obtained confessions from him that shook Germany with their brutality and savagery. Okay, I've taken you straight into the topic. Who is this Friedrich Harman? What's his background? Now I'll tell you. Friedrich Harman was born in Hanover, Germany, in 1879. He was the sixth child of his parents, who were poor and struggling financially. His father was harsh and violent towards him, while his mother loved and cared for him a lot. But what distinguished Harman's childhood was that, as a child, he didn't play boys' games or games. He spent all his time playing with dolls with his sister, dolls like Barbie dolls. Music, he played with them. He wasn't academically gifted or distinguished. What distinguished him most at school was his love of scaring his classmates. He loved to frighten them, play pranks on them, and scare them. When he turned 16, due to his bad relationship with his father, he joined the army and loved military life. He was very distinguished and intelligent. In the army, they say that if he had continued his service, his future would have been different. But a year after joining, he began having epileptic seizures. During one of these seizures, he fell from a height, hitting his head and losing consciousness. All his colleagues said that his personality and behavior changed drastically after he regained consciousness following the fall. He became a completely different person. The ambitious boy who loved his job in the army had changed, and many people believe that this fall played a major role in shaping Harman's criminal personality. In the medical world, there's an old theory that says serial killers experienced a violent incident at some point in their lives that altered their behavior and affected their mental health. Harman left the army because of this illness and returned home to Hanover, where he worked in a cigarette factory. In 1898, Harman was arrested for the first time on charges of sexually abusing a child. He was tried, but he wasn't imprisoned. The doctors who examined him said he suffered from mental problems, and he was committed to a mental institution, where he remained for 6 months before he fled to Switzerland, and in 1902 he returned from Germany, then from Switzerland, and again he fled again, but this time under a false name or alias. This time he left the army for medical reasons but with a full pension. He returned to Hanover and tried to start his own business. He opened a small shop and said he would work there, but he quickly went bankrupt and lost all his money. So he abandoned what they say is honest work, saying the honest path doesn't want him, and turned to the world of crime and theft. He stole and swindled people and was arrested more than once, so his face became familiar to police stations and prisons. They knew him to the point that he started working with them and became an informant. He even worked in prison. In 1914 he was caught red-handed on a major theft charge and sentenced to 4 years in prison. He lived in prison longer than he lived in his own home. When he was released in 1918, he was shocked by the state of Germany after the war. During World War I, the economy was devastated and Germany was experiencing political turmoil. The situation was dire, there were no jobs and life was miserable. So, he decided he had no choice but to return to a life of crime. At that time, criminals were thriving, they were living in luxury. Because of the circumstances Germany was going through, crime was rampant. He decided to go back and live a life of crime again. Harman's first victim was a 17-year-old boy named Fried Roth, who disappeared in September 1918. Since the last time he was seen with Harman, the police raided Harman's apartment. But instead of finding Fried, they found Harman in bed with another boy. He was arrested for sexual harassment and sentenced to only 9 months in prison. The funny thing is, the police didn't even search the apartment. If they had, they would have found Fried Roth's head behind the heater in Harman's room. Imagine that. In 1920, Harman was released from prison and he ingratiated himself with the police, bringing them information. During this time, he met a homeless boy named Hans Granz and had sex with him for money. Their relationship grew strong, they fell in love. He lived with him and they were inseparable. Although Hans didn't participate in the murder of any of Harman's victims, he trained him for his crimes. Sometimes he would take their clothes, wear them, or sell them at a second-hand clothing market. He played a key role in Harman killing 2 people simply because Hans liked their clothes. Hans saw them wearing nice clothes and told Harman, "Kill them. I want their clothes." He said, "Brother, they took the clothes. Go buy yourself some. You and Harmon are ruining your looks." All of Harmon's victims were young men. He confessed to the investigators that he was sexually attracted to young men. Most of his victims were found at train stations, and many were runaways from their families or poor people looking for work. Some were prostitutes. Harmon would approach them and say, "Come here, I'm here. I'll arrange jobs for you, and I have a place for you to stay. You live with me." Sometimes he'll deceive them, telling them he's a policeman and that he'll arrest them for doing this and that. He'll make up any story, take them to his apartment, and there he'll sexually assault and kill them. But the most terrifying aspect of Harmon's crimes wasn't the number of his victims, but the way he killed them. It was a horrific, demonic method that wouldn't even occur to the devil himself. Because of this, Harmon earned the title of vampire. He'd bring his victim, usually a boy, and restrain him with his hands and feet. Then he'd bite him on the neck, biting hard until he reached the windpipe. He'd then press on it and tear off the Adam's apple. He killed them in the same way that predators kill, like a lion when it hunts its prey, seizing it by the neck. Once the windpipe is severed, there's bleeding, and the boy suffocates. Until the victim died, Harmon would enjoy seeing the blood gushing out, keeping his mouth open. He relished drinking their blood, drinking and drinking until the victim died. After the victim died, Harmon would begin dismembering the body. According to Harmon himself, he would lay the body on the ground, then take a piece of cloth and put it over the face. "I don't want to see the victim's eyes. I don't want them to see me while I'm cutting their body. They won't see me. I'm truly insane." Then I would open the abdomen and take out the entrails, putting them in a bucket or pail. Next, I would take a towel and put it in the abdomen to absorb all the blood. After that, I would make 3 cuts in the chest near the ribs and pull the ribs hard until they broke. Then I would cut again and break the ribs until I reached the heart, lungs, and kidneys. I would also remove them and put them in the bucket or pail. Finally, I would separate the legs and arms and peel the flesh off the bones. And I put these parts in a bag or suitcase, and usually it took me 5 trips to the river to get rid of one body. Honestly, I hate doing this process, the dismemberment, but I can't resist the urge to kill. The urge to kill was stronger than my disgust at dismembering the body. The last part one would get rid of was the victim's head. I would hold it and keep its face down towards the ground so the eyes couldn't see me. I don't know what was wrong with the crazy guy. Then I would put pieces of cloth in the ears of the victim's head so they wouldn't hear the sound of the blows as I smashed his head open. His body was melted by the fire. How could the poor thing hear? It was just a donkey's head. So I would keep hitting the head with a hammer until it split open and take out the brains and entrails in a row. You see, he was really crazy. He would cover the body's eyes so it couldn't see him and plug its ears so it couldn't hear him, and the man was dead. He was truly insane, I say. There's something else I want to prove to you. He was a real madman. He would sometimes go and meet the victims' families, going to their homes and telling them he had information about their children. He'd either take a reward or laugh at them. When he returned from their homes, he'd go to Hans and tell him how much he laughed while watching their families begging him for any news. He'd say, "They're crying, and here I am, laughing my head off." The biggest problem is that this man worked as an informant for the police. He lured many of his victims by pretending to be a policeman. Imagine, one of them was a 13-year-old boy. He took him to his apartment, assaulted him, then killed him and dumped him during the day. In the end, Harmon was tried for 27 murders and convicted of 24 of them. It's believed that the number of his victims is much higher. The police found a large quantity of clothes and belongings at his apartment, but they couldn't identify their owners. Imagine, all the belongings they found in his apartment. Harmon was only able to identify a quarter of them, but they could trace a quarter of the stolen items back to their owners. The rest remain unidentified. So, if we consider that a quarter in 24 cases, the number of victims is likely higher than 70 or 80. As I mentioned, Harmon loved to scare people even as a child. This trait was present from his youth. Even during his interrogation, he seemed to enjoy watching the investigators' expressions after describing how he killed his victims. In one of his confessions, he admitted that he sometimes killed two victims simultaneously, taking pleasure in killing one and watching the other terrified, knowing what would happen to him. He also stated that his urge to kill increased daily until he was killing a victim every week. The only person he didn't kill was Carr at the train station, the only one who left his apartment alive. So, what did he do with the victim's flesh? Didn't you ask yourselves that question? Don't you remember when he said he sometimes traded in meat, selling cheap meat during his time there? The economic crisis was raging, and he had a lot of customers. Yes, you know what I mean. He was selling meat to people, claiming that the slices were pork, and sometimes he'd tell them they were lamb. The strangest thing was that some customers liked the meat he was selling, saying it was delicious and cooked quickly. Yes, this meat of yours is delicious and cooks quickly, so be careful. But other people didn't like it. They said that after eating it, they got stomach aches, and the taste was strange. He was even enjoying the slices of meat himself. If he drank blood, he'd definitely eat meat. The police found dried human flesh in his apartment. He was drying some of it. May your head be dried, God willing. Finally, after his trial, he and Hans were sentenced to death by the guillotine. But Hans's sentence was reduced to 12 years in prison, while Harmon's sentence remained the same, death. And the funny thing is, he asked. The court said they would execute him during Christmas so his soul could go to heaven. Your soul has gone, and he'll celebrate there with his mother. My dear Harmon, forget all that. Are you serious? You think you'll go to heaven? You killed 70 people. You're in the lowest depths of hell, my brother. Yes, my brother, you're eating, __. You're going to hell, and what a terrible fate. On April 25, 1925, they cut off Harmon's head in the cemetery, but they didn't bury his head. They buried his body and kept his head. One of the scientists took his head and put it in a glass container to conduct studies on it. To this day, Harmon's head is in the Göttingen Medical School in Germany. Whoever wants to see it can go there. Whoever wants to spit in his eye can go there. My brother, honestly, with all the crimes I'm talking about, these lunatics never end. Every day, one crazier than the last pops up. May God protect us from them and keep us away from their path. Hey everyone, be careful of them. This Harmon is a savage, but he's a real monster. Don't just go with anyone who tells you they're a policeman. Don't believe everything anyone says. There are dogs out there who exploit vulnerable people, especially those without family or money. Many people take advantage of them for dirty purposes, just like that dog Harmon did. We need to be very careful, very careful.